If you've been watching some of the other videos, you know that we're talking about some things that I do and things that I've learned that help me in my land deals that I've just been kind of passing along here. This morning I went and met with a surveyor on a tract that we just got under contract to buy, and I met with the surveyor to I'll tell you what my plan was. This is about a 50-odd acre tract. It's part pasture, part bottomland hardwood timber, and I wanted to get it surveyed, even though I didn't have to get it surveyed to buy it. The legal descriptions are solid enough. The surveyor I met with this morning, he's just doing a straight boundary survey, and what that is that's just simply roping the property off. And roping it off is my language, what I say when I'm talking about just creating a boundary for the legal description itself. It's the red line you see on a plat map. That's roping it off, and that'll tell me exactly how many acres this tract has. But what it will also do is it'll also identify any encroachments that may be on the property. There's some fencing along 3 or 4 sides of the tract. It's sort of an odd shape, so there's more than 4 sides. There's some fencing in spots. It'll identify that fencing and tell me if the fencing is creeping in on the property we're buying, or if our boundary falls short of where the fencing is. And I'll tell you why that's important in just a second. It'll also identify, just any other things on the track, like maybe any roads or trails that cross the corners of it or go along the property. I don't think there are on this track, but a survey will identify all that. And it doesn't fix those problems, but it identifies them, and it creates I like to call it a geographical snapshot, a certified geographical snapshot, meaning whatever is going on that track at that time, fences, pipeline right-of-ways, power lines, any roads or trails that are going across the property, anything like that, buildings maybe on the edge, it will identify those things and show officially where they are, so that it can be argued in the future what was going on exactly in this moment in time. And that's important for a number of reasons. Anyway, met with him for another reason. I wanted him to do a little bit more than just the boundary survey. This particular surveyor is used to me asking him to do midpoints. I call them midpoints. It's not exactly the right word, but I asked him to put in points along a line between 2 corners, and then what he'll do is he'll drive metal T-posts in the ground at those points, and what it does is it just creates a few more points along a line, so that when we go in and mark that boundary, and which we often do because a lot of this is in timberland, when we're flagging, encompassing in and flagging from point to point, it's a lot easier to do when you got more points to connect. It keeps you on course, on track, a lot easier than having to go from one corner all the way, half a mile to the next corner. If you got some points along the way that you can flag to and compass to, and then you can see and correct your line as you go in small segments, it makes it a lot easier than doing it all in one big line. At least it does to me. So I had him do midpoints in some places. I wanted him to identify some fencing, which he did, because our property line in some of those points went all the way up to the fence and beyond it, which means that fence is encroaching on the property we're buying just a little bit. And there were other places where the boundary line, as he surveyed it, was short of where the fence is. So theoretically, the property between the surveyed boundary line and that fence, I could then claim, or we could then claim and establish that as our property going forward. Now, there's a lot more to it than that. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's stealing from me, and I'm not stealing from anyone. But when you have fences on the ground that have been there a long time, they typically become established, so to speak, property lines. And it's good to know if you're gaining acres or losing acres, if you use those fences as possession inside or outside a property line. So anyway, a different conversation, but it also gives you a little more put a little more teeth in your title policy. If you get an owner's policy on a property, having a survey takes one of the exceptions and exclusions out of that title policy, and they can then insure. That's what a title policy does. That title as defined by that survey. So that's helpful to you as well. When you're looking at property to buy, don't automatically just blow off the survey. Especially, if you're in a state that doesn't require a survey, where you can define things by, section, township, and range, as opposed to meets and bounds. But my point is, don't just blow it off just because you're not absolutely required to get it. Think through, what am I going to use this property for? What is around me? What are some of the things on the ground, either on, near my property, that I want to identify as potential problems? And and go, gosh, is just this little money that I'm balking at today, this $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 maybe today, am I just being so tight on a little bit of money today that it's going to end up costing me in the future? So the older I've gotten, I tend to err on the side of the survey now. Don't get them all the time by any means, but more often than not, I'm making the survey and the cost of that survey as part of the deal now. And so it's giving me some peace of mind, and that peace of mind is worth something. So don't just nickel and dime your way through land deals. Try to be smart and think about the future in them, and especially if it's any size that a foul up is going to be very expensive, or if it's real small, meaning the universe has gotten so tight around a piece of property you're buying that it very well could easily be a fence could come into play, a swimming pool could come into play, somebody's retaining wall could come into play, barns, corner of barns and buildings could come into play, because the property lines are so close now. As we get more and more, as civilization sort of becomes more asphalt and less green, property lines are getting closer and closer and tighter. So think through those scenarios. We bought a several hundred acre tract several years ago, and I had this property surveyed, and when we did, the same surveyor found a barn on the neighbor's property where the corner of the barn was going across the edge of our property line. I remember it was 7 feet across the property line. Just the corner of the building. It wasn't even the whole building. A corner was angled 7 feet across our property line. Doesn't sound like much when you're dealing with 300 acre tract, but it needed to be addressed. Survey solved a problem, or revealed a problem, and we had an easy solution for it. And he's happy, we're happy, and future landowners, it'll make their life simpler too when they buy that property and that barn's still there. So anyway, my point is, surveys, the older I get, the more deals I do, they're definitely worth it. Not every time, there are exceptions. I promise you there are exceptions, and every property I buy, I don't get a survey. But man, I think about it on every one, and I typically get them nowadays. So anyway, we'll talk more about some other things. Hope that helps. Bye.